What would happen if the whispers of the past could reveal secrets capable of changing the present? When Helena, a young teacher looking for a fresh start, moves to a small town, she hopes to find peace and quiet. Renting an old house on the edge of the forest, she finds herself immersed in an environment that, although beautiful, carries an invisible weight. The tall, dense trees seem to watch her every step, and the solitude of the house echoes her own insecurities. While organizing her belongings on a quiet night, Helena is interrupted by laughter from children who seem to come from the basement, a space that has been locked for decades. Initially, she believes that her mind is just playing with her, but the voices continue insistent and flashy. Fear and curiosity consume her and, driven by the desire to understand what is happening, she decides to open the door to the basement. What she finds there leaves her speechless, a room filled with old toys and children's drawings, all covered in a layer of dust that seems to tell the story of forgotten times. The environment, although charming, carries an air of sadness and abandonment. Upon further investigation, Helena discovers that the town holds a dark secret involving missing children, an event that has been forgotten by the collective memory. As Helena delves deeper into this story, the whispers that once seemed like only echoes of the past become a cry for help, an emotional connection that makes her reflect on her own life. She realizes that the traumas that led her to this city are no different from the sufferings of that community. The weight of silence and guilt that permeates the city leads her to question her own history and what it really means to seek redemption. Throughout her journey, small interactions with the locals reveal a lot about who she is. For example, when she meets Donna Clara, an elderly lady who lives nearby, Helena hears stories that make her feel a deeper bond with the city. Donna Clara, with her wisdom and love for her memories, becomes a mother figure for Helena, who seeks to understand her place in a world that seems so full of pain. Helena's dream has always been to help people, and this new life in the city is an opportunity to start over. However, she realizes that new beginnings are not always easy. The echoes of the past, both in her personal life and in the city's stories, force her to confront fears she believed she had left behind. As her feelings intensify, she wonders, is she ready to face the ghosts that haunt her, both her own and those of the city? As Helena searches for answers, she discovers that what united her to these lost souls was not just pain, but hope. The truth she is about to reveal can not only bring justice to the children who have been forgotten, but also the peace she so longs for in her own life. In an emotional climax, Helena is faced with a choice: expose the secret that can transform the city, or keep the silence that has accompanied her for so long. Each step Helena takes on this journey brings her closer not only to the past, but also to a new life full of possibilities. She realizes that at the end of the day, everyone is connected by their stories, and maybe, just maybe, forgiveness and redemption are possible for those willing to face the truth, no matter how painful it may be. Helena stood at the door of the basement, her heart racing and her mind confused. The childish laughter that echoed in her head seemed inviting, but also terrifying. She hesitated, but curiosity was stronger than fear. As I pushed the creaking door, a wave of dust rose and the moonlight filtered in, revealing a space that seemed to have been forgotten by time. The old toys were scattered around, each carrying a story that Helena could hardly imagine. There was a rag doll with a worn-out smile, a wooden cart with broken wheels, and a collection of drawings hanging on the walls. Every trace was an expression of joy and innocence, now overshadowed by the mist of the past. But there was something else, a sense of sadness that hung in the air, as if the souls of the children who had played there were still present. As she examined the objects, Helena felt a presence at her side. It was Donna Clara, who had watched her in silence. The lady had a wise and gentle look, and when she noticed the expression of astonishment on Helena's face, she approached with a sad smile. "These children were so full of life," said Donna Clara, her voice soft as a whisper. "They brought joy to this city, but something took them away, and many chose to forget." Helena felt a lump in her throat. The mention of the pain that the city carried reminded her of her own history, of the wounds that had not yet healed. "What happened to them?" he asked, his voice almost a pleading. Donna Clara sighed, as if she were remembering a weight she had been carrying for a long time. "They disappeared, one by one. Some people believe they were taken through the forest, others say they never left the basement. But what matters is that they have been forgotten, and their names are no longer in people's memories." Helena felt a wave of empathy, but also guilt. She couldn't just ignore what she heard. The idea that these children, like her, were looking for a place to belong to hit her hard. "How can we get people to remember?" she asked, determined. Donna Clara looked into Helena's eyes, evaluating her sincerity. "Maybe talking about them, telling their stories, but it takes courage. Many people don't want to relive the painful past." Those words echoed in Helena's mind. What did she know about courage? She had fled her own life, leaving a job she felt trapped in and a city that made her feel invisible. Now, as she faces the city's past, she saw herself reflected in the stories of pain and loss. In the following days, Helena began to integrate into the community. She introduced herself at the local school as the new teacher, trying to create a welcoming environment for the children. But there was a void in the interactions. The pain that had settled in the city was visible, and she began to question whether she should really get involved. With each meeting, the weight of doubt increased. Helena began to realize that her own insecurities were manifesting themselves. She remembered the time when she tried to be someone she wasn't, when she felt lost in her own life. Now, as she tried to bring the city's secrets to light, she wondered if she was putting herself at risk. Mothers looked at her suspiciously, and fathers were cold, as if they feared that she would bring out the truths they preferred to ignore. One of them, Miriam, a woman with tired eyes, often walked away in the middle of conversations, as if she feared that some words might awaken ghosts. "You can't change what happened," Miriam said one day, her voice trembling. "Why do you care so much?" The question hit her like a punch in the stomach, and Helena hesitated, not knowing how to answer. However, there was something special about the connection he established with Donna Clara. The stories the lady told were a mixture of melancholy and hope, and Helena began to realize that, like the children in the basement, she also needed to be heard and understood. On a rainy afternoon, while they were having tea in the small kitchen of Donna Clara's house, Helena opened up. "I feel so lost. I left everything behind, but here, all I see is pain," he confessed, his voice low, almost a whisper. "What is expected of someone who is trying to start over?" Donna Clara smiled, but it was not the smile of someone who had all the answers. "Starting over is an act of courage, my dear. You don't need to have all the answers, just the willingness to listen and learn. Sometimes what you're looking for is in the connections you make with others." Those words resonated deeply within Helena. The connection she felt with the city and her memories was turning into a motivation not to be silent, but doubt still haunted her. What if it failed? What if these secrets came to light and caused even more pain? As the days passed, interactions with residents became more intense. Helena began to bond with some children at school, who in turn helped her find the courage she lacked. But the tension between the desire to help and the pressure of the community left her in a state of constant uncertainty. In a moment of vulnerability, she decided to share her findings with Miriam, hoping that the woman would be able to open up. "I know you're scared," Helena said, trying to find the right words. "But what if we talked about them? About the children?" Miriam looked at her, anger and pain mingling in her expression. "You don't understand. Talking about them only brings back the pain. That's not going to change anything." Miriam's words cut Helena like a knife. The truth was that she was also afraid. Fear of the unknown, of what the answers could mean for herself and for the community. But at the same time, there was a flame inside her that couldn't be put out. The need for justice, the search for what was right, became stronger and stronger. Helena realized that her journey was not just about finding answers, but about reconnecting with her own life, her own story. And as she struggled with her doubts, she began to understand that sometimes the greatest transformations come when you have the courage to face what you fear. Helena sat in the school, watching the children playing in the courtyard. Their laughter echoed in her ears, but at the same time, the memory of the sad stories that Donna Clara had shared enveloped her like a shadow. Miriam's words still resonated in her mind, like an echo that would not leave her alone. Talking about them only brings back the pain. The phrase looked like a wall, blocking the path to the healing she desired not only for the city, but also for herself. One day, after school, Helena decided to visit the local library. The place was dusty and dimly lit, with bookshelves that seemed to have been forgotten by time. She was looking for books about the history of the city, something that could help her better understand what had happened to those children. But as she flipped through the yellowed pages, she was frustrated to realize that virtually nothing mentioned the missing children. It was as if the city was trying to erase a chapter of its own history. Meanwhile, at school, children began to move away from her. Some students looked at her suspiciously, and others simply did not want to participate in her classes. Helena began to wonder if her attempts to connect were hindering more than helping. Doubt turned into a weight on her chest, and she felt more and more isolated. One afternoon, after a class in which the children did not respond to her calls, Helena sat at the table in the classroom, her head in her hands. "What am I doing wrong?" he thought. That doubt consumed her. She wanted so badly to make a difference, but it seemed like she was only making things worse. The laughter that once delighted her was now a constant reminder of her failure. That same week, something unexpected happened. During a walk through the forest near the city, Helena found a small clearing where wildflowers grew in abundance. As she observed the beauty around her, an idea began to take shape in her mind. What if she organized a picnic for the school kids? A moment of fun where they could play and connect without the pressures of everyday life. But the idea soon turned into a new dilemma. When sharing their plans with the mothers, many of them were reluctant. "It's not safe," said one. "We can't risk it," said another. The fear that hung over the city seemed insurmountable. Helena felt that the barriers were closing even more, and the idea of the picnic made her distressed. She wanted to help, but the resistance seemed to be growing stronger. That night, as she looked up at the starry sky, Helena reflected on her own life. He had run away from his old job, hoping to find a new purpose, but now he felt that he had only exchanged one prison for another. The loneliness that accompanied her was suffocating. The weight of her choices made her question whether she really had the courage. The fear of failure was ever present, a constant reminder of her insecurities. At school, the situation worsened. A group of students decided to mock her, imitating her attempts to teach. Helena was devastated. Their laughter cut her like a knife, and she felt helpless. "Why did I think I could change anything?" she thought, as she locked herself in the bathroom to cry. Those tears were of frustration, pain, and despair. The feeling of being alone in her struggle seemed unbearable. As the days passed, the conversations with Donna Clara became a lifeline. Helena sought solace in the wisdom of the woman, who always seemed to understand her confused heart. "Sometimes you have to take a step back before moving forward," said Donna Clara in one of these meetings. "Don't be afraid to fail. What matters is what you learn from it." But words were not enough to erase the pain. Helena began to feel like an intruder in the city, a stranger in a place that was supposed to be her home. The memories of the missing children, as well as the laughter that surrounded her, became a heavy burden. She realized that what she was trying to do was more complex than she had imagined. The voices of the community surrounded her, and the fear of failure was like a constant shadow. In a moment of great tension, she decided to confront Miriam again. "Why don't you want to talk about them? Why don't you want the kids to know what happened?" he asked, his voice trembling. Miriam looked at her, and the look of pain that the woman carried was almost palpable. "Because it will only bring more pain. We can't change what happened." Miriam's words resonated in her mind. Helena realized that she couldn't force anyone to face her past, but she also couldn't give up on her own journey. However, each step seemed more difficult than the last. Doubts began to erode her resolve, making her question whether she was really doing the right thing. One night, while reviewing her notes, Helena found some drawings made by her students. They were simple, but full of life. The children drew the forest, the sky, and even the school. As she looked at those scribbles, Helena realized that even in the midst of pain and fear, there was a spark of hope. Children were still capable of dreaming, and this made her reflect on her own path. She decided that instead of letting herself be discouraged, she was going to use that picnic as a way to connect the children with their stories, even if in a subtle way. And as he prepared for the event, his heart was pounding. The insecurities were still present, but she felt she needed to move on. It was time to show the city that pain could be transformed into something beautiful, something that could unite the community. But as the day of the picnic approached, Helena couldn't ignore the feeling that something could go wrong. The fear of failure accompanied her, and she knew that she would have to face not only the ghosts of the past, but also the resistances of the present. The doubt still haunted her, but when she looked at the children's drawings, Helena realized that the struggle would be worth it. What she didn't know was that that picnic would become a milestone, not only in her life, but also in the history of the city. Picnic day has finally arrived. The sunlight filtered through the trees, creating a play of shadows on the floor of the clearing. Helena was excited, but her heart was beating fast. Some mothers hesitated, but ended up allowing their children to participate, perhaps driven by curiosity or the hope that a day of fun could bring some lightness to the weight everyone carried. Helena smiled at the sight of the animated faces, but each laugh seemed like a constant reminder of her insecurities. She tried to get involved in the games, but there was always a part of her that felt distant, as if she was watching everything from the outside. She had struggled to organize everything: sandwiches, juices, games, and even some colorful toppings for the tables. But as she looked up at the sky, she couldn't shake the feeling that something could go wrong. When the children began to arrive, laughter and joy filled the air, but Helena still felt a knot in her stomach. When the children started playing catch, Helena allowed herself to join in on the fun, She ran after them, laughing and trying to let herself be carried away by the lightness of the moment. But at the same time, the shadow of distrust still hung over her. The memories of the mockery at school were fresh in her mind, and the idea that they could return at any moment made her nervous. While the children were having fun, Helena noticed that a group moved away a little, forming a circle. Curious, she approached and saw that they were drawing on the ground with colored chalk. The vibrant colors contrasted with the dark earth, and Helena felt a warmth in her heart. It was as if, in that small space, the children were creating a world apart where pain did not exist. One of the boys, Lucas, looked at her and smiled. "Teacher, come draw with us," he called. The invitation was simple, but for Helena it was like a light at the end of the tunnel. With a shy smile, she knelt down next to them and began to draw. The strokes were clumsy, but with each line, she felt she was connecting more deeply with these children. However, the moment of joy was interrupted when a child, Anna, began to tell a story about the disappearances. "My mother said that the forest is haunted. They say that the children who entered never came back." The silence that followed was heavy. The air seemed dense, and Helena felt her heart race. Anna's words cut through the festive mood, bringing back the ghosts she had been trying to avoid. The children began to murmur, some with fear, others with curiosity. Helena realized that she had to act quickly before fear took over the picnic. Remembering Donna Clara's words about facing the pain instead of ignoring it, she decided that this was the time to be honest with the children. "I know it's hard to talk about," she said, her voice trembling, "but sometimes sharing our stories can help us feel stronger. Can we talk about it?" Hesitantly, the children looked at each other. A silence settled, and the tension was palpable. Helena felt a lump form in her throat. "If you feel comfortable, we can draw together about what we feel," he suggested, trying to shift the focus. Sometimes drawing can be a way to express everything that is inside us. And to his surprise, some began to pick up the chalk again. One by one, the children began to draw not only what had happened, but also how they felt. The images ranged from expressions of fear to drawings of hope, and with each stroke, Helena felt that the connection with them became stronger. She saw tears in the eyes of some children, but also a glimmer of relief. At that moment, Helena realized that true success was not in avoiding pain, but in facing it head-on, together. Laughter and joy could return, but it was essential to recognize the sadness that existed. She remembered her own journey, how she had run away from her fears and insecurities, and realized that this picnic was not just about fun, but about transformation. As the children drew, Helena began to understand that the fight against fear and pain was not a solitary battle. The sense of belonging she was looking for was there, surrounded by laughter and the stories that were being told. She remembered the words of Donna Clara. "Sometimes you have to take a step back before moving forward." That's what she was doing, and now she saw that this wasn't a failure, but a crucial step in her journey. As the hours passed, the picnic became a safe space. The children began to share stories, and Helena felt part of that community again. The barriers that once isolated her began to crumble, and as she looked at those faces, she realized that she was also helping the city to confront its past. The event, which began with insecurity and fear, has turned into a celebration of life and resilience. Helena saw that by allowing herself to be vulnerable, she was opening a path for others to do the same. The weight that had once suffocated her began to dissipate, and for the first time in a long time, she felt that she was exactly where she should be. The crucial lesson she learned that day was that even in the midst of pain, hope could flourish, and connecting with others was what truly brought meaning to life. As the children drew, the atmosphere in the clearing began to transform. The shadow of fear that had previously hovered was replaced by a feeling of warmth and understanding. Helena watched the scene, her heart warming as she saw the little ones opening up, sharing not only their drawings, but also fragments of their stories. It was as if, by drawing, they were laying bare their souls and at the same time strengthening each other. But even though the situation was unfolding in a positive way, Helena couldn't completely shake off the tide of doubts that had been rising in her mind. Each laugh that echoed through the clearing was like a small victory, but it also reminded her of the insecurities that still haunted her. What if, after all this, the children saw her only as the insecure teacher she was before? What if, at the end of the day, everything was back to normal and she couldn't make a real difference in their lives? "Teacher, look what I drew!" Lucas interrupted his thoughts, proudly holding a colourful drawing of a forest full of cheerful creatures. "This is the forest that is not haunted. Here everyone is safe." Helena smiled, admiring the boy's imagination. "It's beautiful, Lucas. You've made a place where everyone can play together. And you know, we can turn our own forest into a safe place too, can't we?" Lucas's eyes lit up at the idea, and he began to argue with his colleagues about how they could create a refuge in the forest. Helena was impressed by their ability to turn fear into a new possibility. But as the others engaged in the conversation, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of insecurity. Would she have the courage to do the same in her life? The afternoon was progressing, and the sunlight was beginning to become softer, casting a golden glow over the clearing. Helena decided it was time to share something more personal. "You know," she began, her voice a little hesitant, "I've been afraid too. When I was a kid, I didn't think I was capable of making friends. I felt alone and insecure, just as some of you may be feeling now." The children listened to her attentively, and Helena saw that her vulnerability was creating a deeper connection. "But over time, I learned that we all have fears, and that it is important to talk about them, just as we are doing today. Together, we can face these fears." Anna, who had mentioned the haunted forest, raised her hand. "But what if things don't change? What if we're still afraid the next day?" Helena took a deep breath. Anna's question made her reflect. She knew that fear wouldn't magically disappear, but what she had learned that day was that facing fear together could make it easier to bear. "I understand. Fear may return, but what matters is that we now know that we are not alone. We can always talk and support each other." The conversation continued, and the clearing was filled with voices, laughter, and even a few tears. Helena realized the importance of empathy, not only as a teacher, but as a human being. She saw how her own insecurities were slowly dissolving as she allowed herself to be vulnerable. It was a healing process, both for her and for the children. The picnic moved on, and the children began to create a collective mural with the drawings they had made. Each contributed something that represented their emotions, and the vibrant colors blended together, creating a work of art full of life. Helena felt thrilled to see the result. It was as if that mural was a symbol of the journey they were taking together. As the sun began to set, illuminating the clearing with a soft light, Helena realized that this day had been a turning point, not only for the children, but for her as well. The internal struggle he had faced gave way to a new understanding. She could be vulnerable and at the same time a source of strength. However, as she looked at the mural, a new wave of doubts hit her. What if, despite all the progress they had made, the children still faced greater challenges outside of that clearing. What if real life became too heavy, taking away the lightness they had found together? But instead of letting herself be carried away by pessimism, Helena remembered Donna Clara's words. You have to take a step back before you can move forward. And perhaps that was exactly what they were doing, creating a safe space for everyone to explore their emotions and fears before facing the outside world. She turned to the children, who were now preparing to leave. Remember, what we learned today is not just here. We can take that with us. And if you ever feel afraid, remember that you have each other, and that they can always count on me. The smiles on their faces were proof that the message had arrived. Helena felt a wave of hope, knowing that even as the challenges continued, there was a strong bond formed that day that would bind them together. As the children moved away, Helena began to pack things up, but stayed there for a few more minutes, absorbing the experience. She realized that there was a new path ahead of her, a path that involved not only overcoming her own fears, but also building a space where others could grow and heal. And even though fear was still present, there was now also a new strength, a new determination that would accompany her on her journey. As the children walked away, Helena was still engrossed in her thoughts, taking in the vibrant mural that reflected the emotional journey everyone had shared. Each color and shape represented a story, a struggle, a victory. The mural was not just a collection of drawings, it was a testament to what it means to open up and find strength in the midst of vulnerability. She remembered how, throughout the day, every little interaction had contributed to her personal growth. Helena remembered the first time she hesitated to share her own story. That moment of insecurity seemed so far away now. When Hannah had asked about the fear that might return, the answer she gave was more than a simple attempt to comfort. By stating that the fear could return, but that the connection they had created was strong enough to face it, Helena felt that she was finally allowing herself to be true to herself and others. While arranging the material, Lucas approached, holding his drawing of the forest.
Teacher, did you remember what you said about the safe forest? We can do this for real, can't we? The boy's voice was full of hope, and Helena realized that even in his innocence, he captured something profound about the strength of a close-knit group. Yes, Lucas, she replied with a smile. We can start creating this safe place together. And this doesn't have to be just in the forest. We can make our classroom a refuge too.
This idea seemed to shine in a new light, awakening a sense of determination in his heart. What Helena had learned was that strength came not only from herself, but from the connection she could have with others. Each interaction with the children, each laugh shared and each story told became a step in her journey of overcoming. She realized that by accepting her weaknesses and opening herself up to challenges, she was building a new foundation in her life, one based on authenticity and vulnerability. That night, as she prepared for bed, Helena reflected on the fears that accompanied her. She remembered when, as a child, she felt invisible among her classmates, fearing that she would be rejected. Insecurity was a weight he carried, but now, looking at the mural and the laughter of the children, he understood that each past failure had taught him something valuable. She began to see her experiences not as obstacles, but as stepping stones that led her to where she was. In the following days, Helena's classroom was transformed. The children brought their ideas on how to make the space more welcoming. A reading corner was created, decorated with the drawings they had made. The walls were filled with colors and stories that represented the diversity of emotions. Helena felt fulfilled when she realized that she was cultivating an environment where everyone could express themselves freely. One morning, while organizing the materials, Anna approached. "Teacher, I thought you were afraid to open up, but you did it, and now we're all more together." The girl's sincerity touched Helena's heart. "Yes, Anna, I was afraid, but I realized that by sharing, I not only freed myself a little, but also helped you feel safer," she replied, feeling more confident with every word. Helena began to understand that true success was not only in her ability to teach, but in creating bonds with those around her. What once seemed like a challenge now turned into an opportunity for mutual growth. The conversations became deeper, and the children began to share not only their drawings, but also their fears and hopes. In one of these conversations, Lucas asked a question that surprised her. "Teacher, do you believe that everyone can overcome their fears?" Helena hesitated, but as she looked into the boy's sincere eyes, she felt a wave of clarity. "Yes, Lucas. I believe that everyone has this ability. Sometimes we just need a little support and courage to take the first step." Those words were not only a teaching to the children, but a powerful reminder to herself. Helena was learning to trust her own voice more, to allow herself to be vulnerable, and to see that every step she took into the unknown was a step toward her own growth. As the months passed, the classroom became a place where empathy and mutual support flourished. Helena realized that her journey of overcoming was intertwined with that of her children. Together they faced challenges, celebrated achievements, and learned that the road to growth is often fraught with ups and downs. She looked at the mural one last time before leaving the room. Every stroke, every color, was a reminder that life is made of stories, and that each of them, including herself, had an important place in that narrative. Helena smiled, feeling stronger, more confident, and, above all, more connected with those around her. Because, in the end, what really mattered was the journey they had taken together and the lessons they would take with them, not just as students and teacher, but as friends and life companions. As spring approached, Helena's classroom pulsated with energy. The children were increasingly excited about the idea of creating a safe space, a haven where they could explore their emotions and share their stories. However, the teacher felt that despite all the enthusiasm, her own vulnerability still haunted her. One day, during the break, an unexpected incident shook the harmony of the environment. A group of students began to mock Lucas because of his drawing, which had been one of the most creative, but also the most different. The cruel laughter echoed in the room, and the joy that once filled the space was quickly replaced by a heavy silence. Helena observed the expression of pain and confusion on Lucas's face. Those laughs weren't just an affront to his work, they were an attack on what he had worked so hard to create. Helena's heart tightened. She recalled similar moments in her childhood when she felt alone and discredited. The fear of being judged paralyzed her. And now, seeing Lucas at the mercy of criticism, the teacher knew she needed to act. But how? Insecurity enveloped her again, like a dense fog that made clarity difficult. "Guys, let's have a conversation circle," Helena suggested, trying to keep her voice steady. She knew she needed to divert attention from the mockery and turn that moment into a learning opportunity. But as he spoke, his mind was filled with doubts. What if no one wanted to listen to her? What if the children didn't learn anything? The students settled in, and the atmosphere in the room was tense. "Today, I want us to talk about the importance of respecting the creations and emotions of others," Helena began. She looked at Lucas, who was still crestfallen. "We all have fears and insecurities, but we also have unique talents. What may be funny for some may be painful for others." Some students began to murmur, but Helena stood firm. "I was also afraid. afraid to share my own drawings when I was a kid. What I learned is that each of us has the right to be heard and respected." Helena's voice trembled, but she kept going, determined to get her message across. Anna raised her hand. "But teacher, what if we don't like what the person did? How can we say that without hurting her?" It was a valid question, and one that reflected the complexity of coexistence. Helena took a deep breath. It is important to express our opinions, but always with empathy. We can say what we feel in a way that doesn't hurt. And remember, behind each drawing, there is a story, a feeling. Lucas finally raised his head, his eyes seeking Helena's approval. She smiled at him, encouraging him to express himself. "I just wanted them to see what I really feel in the woods," he said, his voice breaking. "I just wanted them to understand." The excitement in the room was palpable. Helena felt a wave of solidarity emerge among the students. "Let's do something special," she said, inspired. "How about we create a mural where each one can put a drawing that represents their fears and hopes? That way, we can all understand each other better." The children's faces began to glow. The idea of turning pain into art resonated as a symphony of hope. The teacher realized that by sharing her vulnerabilities, she was creating a space for others to do so as well. The tension that once dominated the room began to dissipate, but there was still a part of Helena that struggled with its own fears. What would happen if, in creating the mural, she had to confront her own past? What if his own drawings, old and full of insecurities, were exposed? This idea terrified her. However, she knew she needed to lead by example. Over the next few days, the classroom turned into a vibrant studio. Each child worked in their own space, putting their emotions on paper. Helena, in turn, reluctantly began to draw as well. As I drew the lines, a sense of liberation began to emerge. He remembered moments of pain, but also of overcoming. Each brushstroke was a step toward acceptance. When the mural was finally unveiled, the room was filled with anticipation. Helena watched the students' expressions as they admired each other's creations. What was once a space of fear now pulsated with empathy and understanding. But Helena's real test of strength was about to happen. When she turned to reveal her own drawing, she felt butterflies in her stomach. What would students think? What if they didn't accept it? She hesitated, but the image of Lucas and the other children encouraged her to move on. With a determined gesture, she turned the mural over for all to see. Eyes were fixed on his creation, a dense forest full of vibrant colors, but also shadows. The forest represented their fears, their insecurities, but also their hopes. "This is my forest," said Helena, her voice trembling, but full of sincerity. "Here are my fears. Here are the parts of me that I'm still learning to accept." The silence in the room was profound. Then Anna broke the ice. "Teacher, this is beautiful. We all have something to learn from you." And little by little, others began to speak out, sharing their own stories of fear and overcoming. Emotion took over the space. Tears were shed, laughter and hugs followed. Helena realized that by opening up, she had created an environment where everyone felt safe to be vulnerable. The connection he had established with the students was not only a reflection of his journey, but a symbol of the power everyone has to support each other. On that day, Helena not only overcame her fears, but also strengthened meaningful bonds with her children. She learned that true strength comes from authenticity, and that by opening up, she had encouraged others to do the same. The mural was not just a collection of drawings. It was a celebration of the collective journey where each one found their place, their voice, and above all, their strength. While the children laughed and shared their stories, Helena finally felt free. That classroom, now full of colors and emotions, was a true refuge. And more importantly, she had discovered that friendship, empathy, and vulnerability were the pillars of a fulfilling life. Helena watched the children as they laughed and shared their stories around the mural. The environment that was once marked by fear and insecurity now pulsated with joy and acceptance. She realized that by opening up about her own vulnerabilities, she had encouraged students to do the same. The room was full of colors and emotions, reflecting not only the drawings, but also the experiences of each one. The teacher felt that her journey of personal overcoming was just beginning. The fears that had paralyzed her before began to dissipate, and she found herself more confident. That moment of sharing made her understand that vulnerability was not a sign of weakness, but rather a bridge that connects people. From that day on, she decided that she would not let the fear of being judged prevent her from expressing herself. After the mural was revealed, Helena sat down with Lucas, who was still emotional. "Did you feel good about sharing your drawing?" she asked softly. The boy nodded. "Yes, teacher. I thought no one would understand, but now I see that everyone has something to say, and my drawing can make someone feel better." Luke's words touched Helena's heart. He had learned a valuable lesson about empathy and acceptance, just as she did. The teacher also noticed changes in the other children. Anna, who had previously hesitated to express her opinion, was now more confident. She began to organize small conversation circles where students could share their feelings about what they drew. "What do you think, teacher?" asked Anna one day, with a twinkle in her eyes. "Can we do this every week?" Helena smiled, realizing that the initiative had spread. The interactions between students became richer and deeper. Those who had once been the targets of ridicule now felt valued. Friendships began to blossom in unexpected ways. Students who were once just classmates were now friends who supported each other. Helena realized that the classroom was becoming a true community, where everyone felt like they belonged. Helena also began to reflect on her own trajectory. Over the years, she had allowed herself to be consumed by the fear of judgment. The experience with the mural and the emotional openness of the children made her understand that imperfections were part of life. What really matters, she thought, is the connection we make with others. This new perspective helped her free herself from some insecurities that had accompanied her for a long time. One afternoon, while organizing the materials for class, Helena found an old notebook full of drawings she had made in childhood. As she flipped through it, she felt a wave of nostalgia and a mixture of sadness. There were drawings that reflected his deepest fears and unfulfilled dreams. But instead of letting herself get down, she decided it was time to turn those feelings into something positive. "I can use these drawings as inspiration," he thought, "to help my students understand that we all face challenges." In the days that followed, Helena began to share some of her stories with the class. She talked about moments when she was afraid to show herself, about how the drawings helped her express what she felt. The children listened to her attentively, and she could see how her words impacted each of them. "If I can share this with you, so can you," she said, encouraging them to open their hearts. The mural, which was initially a space to express pain, has become a symbol of resilience and overcoming. Helena realized that true wealth was not in material achievements, but in the ability to connect with others through empathy and understanding. The lessons she had learned from her students inspired her to be a better teacher and a more authentic person. The effects of that experience continued to expand. Helena began to implement new activities that encouraged group work and collaboration. Students learned to value each other's differences and to find beauty in diversity. That classroom, once marked by insecurity, was now a space for learning and mutual growth. As the weeks passed, Helena felt a new energy inside her. She was more willing to take risks and explore new teaching methods. The confidence she had gained helped her see difficulties not as barriers, but as opportunities to learn and grow. And in doing so, she became a living example that vulnerability can be a powerful force. The children, in turn, began to support each other more and more, creating an environment where everyone was heard and respected. Lucas, who had previously felt insecure, was now one of the first to encourage his classmates to express their emotions. Anna, in turn, became a natural leader, always looking for ways to help others feel good. Helena realized that by embracing her own vulnerability, she had inspired a wave of change that resonated with her students. The classroom was not only a place of academic learning, but a space for emotional and social growth. Everyone was learning to deal with their emotions and to value each other's life stories. And so, as spring settled outside, Helena's classroom became a vibrant haven of love, understanding, and friendship. She knew there was much more to come, but she was ready to face whatever came her way, strengthened by the power of the human connection she had cultivated. Time passed, and Helena's small classroom became a place where empathy and friendship flourished. With the mural still vibrant on the walls, the teacher looked at her students and saw not just children, but a close-knit group that had learned to face their fears and support each other. Helena reflected on her journey and how each challenge she faced had shaped her. The fear of judgment that had once paralyzed her had now become a fuel that propelled her to be the best version of herself. As the months passed, Helena incorporated new approaches into her classes. Each activity was an opportunity for students to express their emotions and share their stories. She realized that education went beyond academic content. It was about forming empathetic and conscious citizens. The children began to get involved in community projects, taking their learning outside the classroom. They organized food drives, visits to nursing homes, and even small events to promote inclusion. The connection they cultivated not only impacted their lives, but also the surrounding community. Helena began to receive feedback from parents and other educators who noticed a significant change in the children. They were more open and respectful, not only among themselves, but also at home. Families reported that conversations at home became more profound, with children sharing their feelings and listening to adults' stories. Helena felt that she had contributed to something bigger than herself. The classroom that was once a space of insecurity had become a beacon of hope. On a sunny day, Helena organized an exhibition with the students' drawings and stories. The room was filled with parents, friends, and community members. As she looked at the children's illuminated faces, she realized that each of them had found their voice. Luke's words resonated in his mind. "My drawing can make someone feel better." That phrase wasn't just about art. It was about the power of stories and how they could touch people's hearts. As she watched the students present their work, Helena felt a wave of gratitude. She realized that her own vulnerability had been the key to opening doors that were previously locked. What began as an internal struggle had now turned into a legacy of love and acceptance. The teacher knew that this journey of overcoming was just the beginning. She decided that she would continue to explore her own stories, share her experiences, and encourage others to do the same. The days turned into months, and at the end of the school year, Helena received an unexpected proposal. The school was organizing an event to celebrate diversity and inclusion, and the teacher was invited to be one of the main speakers. The invitation made her reflect on how much she had grown. She remembered her insecurities and how she had transformed. Now, she was ready to share her story with a larger audience, using her voice to inspire other educators and students. At the event, Helena spoke about the importance of vulnerability in education and how it could create a more welcoming and inclusive environment. She shared her experiences with students and highlighted the impact that empathy had made in the classroom. Her words touched many hearts, and she saw tears of emotion and smiles of understanding. It was evident that her journey had not only changed her, but was also influencing others to open up and connect in deeper ways. After the event, Helena received messages of thanks from several educators who inspired her to adopt new approaches in their own classrooms. She realized that the change was contagious. That journey wasn't just about her, it was about everyone who had the courage to put themselves out there and connect. Each story shared was a seed planted, which would blossom into a future filled with compassion and understanding. Years later, Helena looked back and saw how her life had transformed. The fear that had once paralyzed her was now a distant memory. She had learned to embrace uncertainty and allow herself to be vulnerable. Helena has become an advocate for emotional education, speaking at conferences and workshops, sharing the message that everyone has a story that deserves to be heard. Her classroom became a model for other schools, and many students who passed through her hands returned to tell how her life lessons had impacted their paths. Helena knew that the journey would never have a definitive end. Each day brought new challenges and learning opportunities. But now she was equipped with the wisdom she had gained and the certainty that vulnerability was, in fact, a powerful force. As she looked to the future, she felt at peace, aware that she had created a legacy of love and acceptance that would extend far beyond the walls of the classroom, touching the lives of many to come. Helena, in her journey of transformation, not only allowed herself to grow, but also made everyone around her flourish. Looking back, she saw a timeline full of challenges but also achievements. How many times had she hesitated, fearful of criticism? But each step she took toward vulnerability had brought her closer to her students and to the very essence of what it meant to be an educator. At the end of the school year, as she watched her former students say goodbye, Helena felt a mixture of joy and longing. Lucas, with his radiant smile, approached. "Teacher, I'm going to miss our conversations. Thank you for teaching me how to draw and how to express myself. You changed my life." The boy's words echoed in Helena's heart, reminding her that every little change she had made had a real and lasting impact. As time went by, Helena realized that her role as an educator went beyond teaching. She had become a mentor, a guide who helped her students navigate their own emotions. Each story shared in the classroom was a life lesson, a testament to the importance of empathy. And as her own confidence grew, she began to allow herself to be more authentic, more true. One morning, in one of the meetings with other educators, Helena reflected on the importance of failing and starting over. "You know," she said, "every mistake we make is a learning opportunity. When I allowed myself to fail, I discovered new ways to teach and connect with students." Her colleagues listened attentively, many nodding in agreement. It was a sharing of experiences that became more and more common, a support network that was formed between them. Helena also realized that success was not just a matter of grades or academic results. She began to understand that true success lay in the connections she created, in the lives she touched. Success is seeing a student open up. It's realizing that they feel safe to be who they really are, he shared with a twinkle in his eye. The room was filled with smiles, each reflecting the true essence of what Helena had inspired. In a moment of deep reflection, Helena remembered a conversation with her friend and colleague, Rita. Did you know that emotional education is the key to a better future? When we teach our students to understand each other, we are building a kinder world. Rita's words reverberated in Helena's mind, reinforcing her mission to promote empathy. Over the years, Helena's legacy has spread, not only in her school, but throughout the community. Students who passed through his classroom became advocates for inclusion, multiplying the lessons they learned. Helena knew that the impact of her work was like an echo, reaching hearts and minds beyond what she could have imagined. However, the teacher also understood that the journey would never end. Each new group of students brought with them their own stories and challenges. And so Helena prepared herself to continue her mission, with the certainty that every day was a new opportunity to make a difference. Life is made of stories, he used to say, and each of us has one that deserves to be told. As she looked at her students, now grown up and heading in different directions, Helena felt a wave of hope. The friendship that had blossomed between them had become an unbreakable bond. And even if the paths led them far, the lessons of love and acceptance would forever be etched in their hearts. Finally, Helena decided she wanted to hear more stories. With a twinkle in his eye, he invited everyone to share their experiences. Let's build together a world where every voice is valued, where empathy reigns, and where each of us can feel safe to be who we really are. And so, she launched an invitation to all who listened to her. If you also believe in the power of stories and the importance of empathy, like and share this message. Let's spread the light of understanding and love together. Come be part of this journey and share your own experiences in the comments. Together we can create a space where every voice is heard and every story is celebrated. The time to act is now. The call resounded in the air, and Helena felt that she had planted another seed of hope. She knew that by sharing and connecting, the legacy of love and acceptance would continue to grow, touching lives and inspiring hearts for many years to come. And so, with a smile on her face and a heart full of gratitude, she prepared for another day in the classroom, ready to embrace the new stories that awaited her.